Hi, welcome to Financial Planning Explained. I'm your host, Mike Menninger, certified financial planner, founder of Menninger and Associates Financial Planning. As you know, I'm all about education and of the various different areas of financial planning. You got cash management, tax planning, risk management, investment planning, retirement planning, and estate planning. For the first time on my show, I actually have a guest who is a client of mine, an individual, and I think it's really neat is because he's almost like a case study for just about every facet of the 6 areas of financial planning. And just decided to have him on the show. And he's a friend of mine and subsequently became a client, which is kind of interesting because most people became clients and then became friends afterwards. But anyway, Dave, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
So, Dave, I've known him for probably about 15 years now, but you live in Pennsylvania again now, but you've always been in refrigeration and design. And so tell me a little bit about your life, so to speak, after graduating high school, let's say.
After barely making it through high school. I got into refrigeration kind of by accident and wound up working my way as a mechanic for years and then becoming a partner in a business that worked nationally and some international work. Business was in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania here.
Yeah, you were a part owner of that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It was that long ago.
Stayed in the business, in the refrigeration business, with a company who did similar work to what my company was, and then became the district sales manager for Frick Industrial Refrigeration, a division of Johnson Control.
Yeah.
And I've been with them for the last 15 years. So I've been in the industrial refrigeration business for about 40 years.
Boy, that's amazing. That's amazing. Even to say 40 years is pretty impressive in itself. The thing is, one of the things that's most impressive about you is how successful you've been. People feel I must have a college education or a master's degree or whatever. And financially, you've been very successful without having an advanced degree. And I think that's great.
Well, I've always been a proponent of education, but education is more what you do with it than how much of it you get.
Yeah, right. Oh, I agree with you. Well, one of the things that you did, and I know we've had these discussions, is you don't let debt get in the way. You don't buy things that you don't need. You don't finance and buy stuff that you can't afford. You were always a proponent of you don't borrow the money unless you have the money to pay for it, right?
Pretty much. I ran the business pretty much the same way. It was more of and I try to teach this to young people myself is, if you really want something, fine, get it. But if you're really interested in owning it, save the money and pay cash for it.
Right.
Because then you'll find out that you don't do much impulse buying because it takes you a while to save your money.
That's right. Well, that's a good idea.
And then you also don't fill up your garage and these storage facilities with stuff that you bought on impulse and don't want anymore. And now it's
impulse
still paying for it.
Yeah, right. Impulse and on credit.
Yes. So you're paying to store stuff you haven't even paid for yet.
Well, it's funny because what my father used to say is that, he said, why would I finance a car? He says, I'm going to pay $300 a month for 5 years when I can save $200 a month for 5 years. Get ahead of the curve as opposed to behind the curve.
Well, and the adage of financing things, there's certainly time and place for financing things. But for the most part, what I tell folks, because I'm a big proponent with my nieces and nephews and everybody else, to do the proper financial planning for yourself, for your future. But you don't want to have, I call the banks a parasite.
Exactly.
They're, you get the same amount of stuff, but why pay the bank to get it early?
Oh, absolutely.
You wind up, so my business was run that way. I ran my life that way. I'm 62 years old and never paid a penny in credit card interest in my life.
Yeah, well, that's good. Well, there are times for debt. I mean, fact of the matter is that, obviously to buy your first house, I imagine you took a mortgage, right?
Yeah, I tell people now today there's usually I used to tell them there's only 2 things you ever borrow money for: car and a house.
All right.
Everything else, if you really want it, save your money and buy it. Today, unfortunately, because of the cost of education, there's a third item which most young kids get saddled with: is student loans.
It's amazing.
Right.
That's going to be a problem that's going to rear its head in this country.
Yes, it is.
You
Well,
know,
it already has.
it actually has, in many ways that, kids are graduating college with all this massive student loan debt. It's actually inhibiting them from buying a house because effectively the student loan debt may as well be a mortgage. $1,000 a month
Oh
just to
yeah,
pay.
and they're paying 10, 15 years, 20 years to
Oh yeah,
get out from
absolutely.
underneath it.
Oh, absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's not a low interest rate. The loans are hovering at 7 or 8%.
Yep.
Even sometimes down as low as 5 or 6, but still, that's a mortgage in itself.
Yes,
And
it
it's
is.
inhibiting them not just from buying a house, from just getting ahead of the game.
It certainly does. I certainly agree with that. Unfortunately, with today's world, I was fortunate enough years ago where I was able to get jobs and do things that I wanted with only a high school education. It's much more difficult for young people today that I see to get into the professional world without a college degree. That
Yeah,
it has a big
it helps. It's
importance
basically.
about it that's overblown in some cases, in my opinion. But
I don't disagree with you in many
it's
cases.
it's somewhat a necessity, and it also helps round kids out a little bit more before they get into the
What?
or grow up.
Teaches them how to party for 4 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's really rounding them out.
Yeah.
It's like taking an
Yep.
18-year-old man and turning him into a 21-year-old
Mhm.
boy.
Right.
Yeah, and well, the thing is too that happens a lot of times, and I see it is even the kids graduate from college and they find themselves doing work that doesn't require the education. And so, why'd you go to college?
It's unfortunate that that's how a lot of it works. I mean, I was fortunate where I wound up getting into a business that I knew nothing about by accident, and
How
I
you're
think
fortunate. You made your. I'm a believer. You make your own luck. Sure, you get lucky, but you make your own luck. If you didn't work hard and you didn't put your nose to the grindstone, you wouldn't have gotten to where you are. And I believe in that.
yeah, I do too. I mean, I'm a believer that opportunity knocks on everyone's door sometime throughout their life. A lot of people sometimes recognize that opportunity and take advantage of it. Others sometimes are too lazy to get up off the couch and actually answer the door
Well,
to see the opportunity or even recognize that it is one.
yeah, but a good go-getter is knocking on other doors and hoping that opportunity answers it.
Sure.
And that's
I didn't get anything that I have acquired in life
handed to you.
without I didn't inherit anything, didn't get a nepotism job. Everything I got was
Oh,
hard work.
you know what?
And
Guess what?
stepping up and taking risks where I had to and
Risk
living
isn't
with
a
the
bad
consequences.
thing. Risk isn't a bad thing. I mean, I took a risk with starting up my business.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big risk. I left a very good
Sure.
paying job to make zero when I started up. So, got to have faith in yourself too.
Absolutely. When I had the company, was running the company, it was, growth was a double-edged sword. You had to be careful, spending too much to grow. And if it doesn't realize, then you jeopardize what you've already gotten.
Right.
So
it's part of risk.
Risk is always a part of life.
So, how did you build your wealth? You basically said, I'll go back with, it's amazing what the difference between saving for 30 years, 35 years, or 40 years. You said you've been working for over 40 years.
Right.
It's remarkable. You started real early putting money away.
Right.
Tell me about that.
Right. I was in this business for 40 years, but I've been saving for 50.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate that I had parents that taught me to save money.
Yeah.
Somewhat forced me to save money. And the fact that I was very cheap and didn't have much money. So it made it very easy to cling to the little bit of money that you got as you were young.
Well, I think you were saying you're saving $7 a week or something like that.
My first dollar cost averaging kind of systemic savings started when I got one of my first jobs when I think I was in my late teens, 19
They
years
didn't have
old.
401ks at that time, did they?
That time I started saving $7 a week out of my paycheck of $120 at the time.
Okay.
In a program where you could buy stock
Oh, really?
of the company that I worked for. Yes.
Really? That's employee stock purchase programs. Okay.
Yes, exactly. And
What company was that?
it was Synthane Taylor Corporation right here in King of Prussia.
Okay.
And the company that owned them was called Alco Standard. I don't know if they're still around
I
any
don't
longer.
know, but that sounds like that was a public corporation at the time, right?
It was a public
Yeah, okay.
corporation, and what we were able to do with our money at our my $7 a week was purchase the stock at the lowest quarterly price.
Oh, so it was an employee stock purchase program.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And that was how I was able to afford my first house in my
Yep.
mid-20s. I saved $7 a week for 2.5 years, and it accumulated to $4,500,
Which is the
which
down
was
payment
part
on your
of the
house.
down payment for my first house.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
back then the houses were a little bit cheaper, but it's amazing, but see, the thing is that people feel it's very easy to feel like, gee, $7 isn't going to get me anywhere, but it's amazing how far it will. And even, talking in the 70s versus today, granted, we had a lot of inflation at the time, but still that would be no different than $30 a week.
Well, I'm sure you've had people come on here and talk about the wealth effect, which is basically you start saving money on a systemic basis, on a regular basis, and you find out that you start to save money, and you start to get a bank account, and you start to see interest on that account. You start to see some growth in that account.
Oh, it gets cool.
And then you're like, wow, this is pretty cool.
Wow, this $7 is 1,000, and now it's 2,000.
Exactly.
Now it's 4,000. Absolutely.
So that wealth effect is very powerful to help you to continue to push you to save as much money as you can.
Oh, it's motivating. That's
very
the same
motivating.
thing with
That's the right
401ks. And I was commenting in last week's episode, like if I didn't have a company match with my first 401k, I probably wouldn't have contributed. But I was contributing 6%. They were matching 3%. And before you know it, all of a sudden, you're right. It's 1,000, it's 5,000, it's 10,000, it's 20,000. Next thing you know, like, hey, these are real numbers.
Yes, it is.
It was a beautiful thing.
And the earlier you start, the better that.
Oh, that's what I was saying.
That growth is
the difference, and it's what the rule of compounding, or the magic of compounding. I forget who it was that. It might have been Einstein who actually, the magic of compounding. And it's remarkable the difference between, as I indicated, saving $100 a month for 30 years versus 40 years. In fact, quick story for you. Two brothers graduated high school. One of them's 18, or actually two twin brothers, both 18. The one starts saving $2,000 a year into an account for 8 years and stops. Meanwhile, the other brother doesn't. And at the end of 8 years, the first brother stops and the second brother starts. At the age of 65, the one who did it for only 8 years still had more money. Right. That's the magic of compounding. Right. And the magic of starting early. And how many people graduating from college, oh my goodness, I can't afford it. You just can't. I'm
a big advocate of younger people starting to save.
Absolutely.
No matter what. I mean, even, I've talked to you about some of the younger people I've run across and tried to, get them hooked up with you to start some of these things. But like I said, even that $7 a week or $10 a week, if you really look at it, what does that represent? A cup of coffee?
Yeah.
Or getting your nails done. And like you said, you add that money up every week.
It adds up.
Week after week.
$10 adds up to 100 to
thousands, to 10,000s.
In a hurry.
Yes.
In a hurry.
Right.
So, I can't agree with you more. We're up on break already. So we'll be back in just one moment. Stay tuned. We'll be back with you in a moment.
Have you saved enough for retirement? Are you financially prepared for an emergency or unexpected event? Have you thought about your financial future?
Hi, I'm Mike Menninger, founder of Menninger & Associates Financial Planning. For over 20 years, we have been answering our clients' questions just like these as we develop unique and comprehensive financial plans tailored to meet their needs. When addressing your financial plan, we incorporate your entire financial picture, including taxes, estate planning, as well as investment planning and retirement planning. So call us today for a complimentary, no-obligation consultation.
A unique approach to financial planning.
Welcome back to Financial Planning Explained. I'm Mike Menninger, your host, and I'm here with Dave Bardsley. We were talking during break about, it's not how much you save, it's how much you keep of what you're saving,
Right.
which led us into
Right.
taxes.
Everybody makes a lot of money in their lifetime. It's the few people that are able to keep it.
Well, and funny, people who also take a look at their paycheck their first time, are like, holy cow. Like, I thought I made $1,000 this week. Why did I come home with 600? So
Right.
you're actually a case study that I've done with my staff in the office, and we talk about it. Tax planning. Do not underestimate the impact of taxes on long-term growth. And in fact, we have another case study similar to yours going on with someone in California. So
Right.
people who live in New York and California
these
have
tax
something
states.
common.
Right.
High tax states, right?
Yep.
So what we were doing with Dave, it was really cool, is you just moved back to Pennsylvania, a couple years ago, last year?
Yep.
Um,
Just in time for the lockdown.
yeah, that's right. That's a separate issue in itself. So, so what we were doing, it was pretty cool, is, while you're living in New York is tagging you with a 6.5% state tax, okay, on your earnings. However, New York, like California, okay, and California is like 9, 10, 12%.
13 max.
What's that?
13 max.
Yeah, it gets to 12 in a hurry. Take my
Yeah.
word for it. So certain states, and when we talked about this from a retirement planning, certain states don't tax the money coming out, but other states give you a tax deduction going in. And just looking at New York, if you put in, let's say you're in a 24% federal tax bracket, you put in $1,000 into your 401k, you're getting a 24 plus a 6.5% tax break. And you move to Pennsylvania, you take that $1,000 back out. Pennsylvania doesn't charge a tax.
There's 8 states in the country that don't charge tax on retirement.
Well, and you're eyeing up 2 of them, Pennsylvania and Florida.
Yeah,
And actually,
exactly.
the interesting part about it is that the individual who lives in California, we're going through a retirement planning scenario. He beat me to the punch when he said, hey, I'm thinking about moving to Florida. I'm like, bang. And he's contributing to his Roth 401k. I'm like, whoa, we need to flip that because of the fact that he'll be saving, in his case, over 9%
Right.
just in state tax. So, you get a gain in your money of like 20% just by the sake of not paying tax. So do not underestimate tax planning. And that's a scenario that you and I are playing.
Planning, period. I mean, you talk about tax planning, but planning is in and of itself the primary thing you need to do.
Absolutely.
Which is planning to save, planning to retire, planning your growth and how you want to invest. There's so many things that go into that, but planning is the primary key.
Well,
If you don't plan, if you don't have a direction, you don't know where you're going, you don't have that plan, it's very hard to get there.
well, they say a couple cliches for you. People don't plan to fail. They fail to plan. And one that
Right.
I've found enjoyable, the Marine Corps major said, proper prior planning prevents poor performance.
With 7 P's, we had it on the
there's
wall of
there's
our
an
company.
extra word in there too that we left
Yeah,
out.
proper prior preparation prevents poor performance.
Right, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah,
we had that on the wall of our company with all of our employees.
Really?
We said the same thing.
Well,
we
you
had
know
it
what?
on
It's
right in our
absolutely
lobby.
the truth. It's absolutely the truth. And that's how I run all of the business. When I say the business, all of my financial planning I do for clients, it's planning first.
Well, you need to treat yourself as a business. That's, I think, where a lot of people don't recognize the requirements of planning and saving. With any business, unless you're a philanthropist, there's one reason we are in business.
To make money.
And it's not to do refrigeration, which is what
Right.
I'm in, or sell bagels or coffee. It's to make money.
Right.
That's your primary goal. If you don't make money, all that other stuff is meaningless.
Right.
So you need, and the whole point of, retirement and yourself is you want to make money and have that opportunity to, retire nicely or retire at all in some people's cases. And you need to treat yourself like a business, save that money, have that plan, work towards those goals.
The interesting part about it is, I haven't worked in this industry for over 20 years. I've had the opportunity to meet people of all ages. And for those people that I've been working with for 20 years, it's enabled me to watch demographics. And one of the things that I have found is that it's remarkable. It's almost like your eyes go bad when you're 40. It's when you're 60 plus or minus 2, it's remarkable how people just get tired and tired of it. And medical events happen. And so, unfortunately, those people who hadn't planned for many years find themselves in a tough situation, particularly if they can't work. A medical event, a heart, some type of disability. Now, all of a sudden, they're stuck. And had they just done, as you pointed out, just that $7 a week makes all the difference in the world when you're 60 to be able to say, I can leave on my terms and not be in a position where I have to work even when I don't want to.
Right.
And that's the position you put yourself in.
Yep. I had that goal in mind when I was in my 20s, probably.
Of course.
I wanted to, I didn't want money to be the driving force in my life. So I made it the driving force in my life
Well, I was going to say.
at the beginning of my life, so that later in life, it didn't dominate or dictate what I could do in life.
You mean like you've been threatening to retire for 3 years now, but it's hard to?
Well, there's circumstances come along. Yeah, but it's there's the like I said, the sooner you plan for these things, and have that goal, the better you are to achieve them. And as you mentioned, I'm fortunate. My wife and I are both fortunate that we're at a point in our lives where we have a choice,
Yeah.
because we did the things that we needed to do
earlier
in life.
Oh, absolutely.
And we do that. And I encourage people to do that when they're young, because you have the energy, you have,
The time.
the energy and the time.
Time's
you
on your
have,
side. Oh my
you
goodness.
have time. Yes, you have time to compound those positive things you do in your life.
Absolutely.
And they will compound the negative things if you aren't careful in letting that time get away from you.
I can't begin to tell you how many people have virtually nothing, and they're almost 50. But
I've got
but when I
friends-
see
I've got
them,
friends that are my age and older that have nothing,
yeah, well,
and you feel sorry for them, and they're like, you can't make it up in 3 years.
no, but when someone who's 50 or 52 comes to see me and they're ashamed, and believe it or not, a lot of people don't come to see me because they're ashamed.
Yep.
And I'm like, you know what? Take that shame and leave it at the door, and forget what's not. Let's look forward.
Never too late to start.
That's correct. It's never too late
Never
to start.
too late to start.
And put yourself in a position, first of all, whenever you're dealing with the financial plan, it's the cash management first. Try to put away and get rid of that debt, because that debt is costing you hard-earned money to be paying the bank the interest.
Well, that's where somebody like yourself comes in. I've been fortunate. I've been a numbers person my whole life, and as you know, we've been friends for a long time. You got into business. I didn't even work with you in the very
Right.
first few years you were in business, because I managed most of my own money.
Sure.
But it's a thing of numbers. I mean, why give banks $100 a month out of your paycheck, which you're already complaining isn't enough,
Right.
just to get something a year earlier, 2 years
It's
earlier.
silly.
It's
silly.
crazy. And those are the things that can shackle people and cause them some pretty much big heartache later on in life.
Well,
Is the decisions you make and the plans that you don't make early on in life.
Planning also has to include the what ifs, because the only thing that you can guarantee about a plan is it never goes to plan.
Well, yeah.
But you got to have contingencies. You got to have, and by the way, that's a lot of what we do for our planning is all the contingencies.
Yeah.
You got to make sure that people are adequately insured. I'm not here
Nobody
to
has
sell.
nobody has the crystal ball that tells and dictates or gives you the future. So I
Right.
mean, what you really have to do is make a plan.
Right.
Start with a plan and have that plan flexible enough that you can
Contingencies.
make
Yes,
do
absolutely.
those contingencies, do those things that you need to do to, mitigate changes in the economy and
Of
your
course.
job or anything else that
Job,
comes
taxes,
along.
where are you going to live?
Health.
And health. You're absolutely correct. And so, and I could, you know me, I never, I always look at the tax impact first. I mean, not that I look at it first. Well, I do look at it first, but people fail to realize the impact of taxes. and the role it can play. And now you're approaching the time with which you're eligible to begin collecting Social Security. Well, when
Right.
you eventually retire, like you've been threatening for 10, 15, 20 years, it's getting longer. By the time the episode's over,
Yeah.
it's going to be 45 years.
Yeah, right.
So anyway,
It's coming soon.
well, and estate planning is something that also people think of, and that's something that I kind of roped you in. I said,
Yeah,
you need to think about it.
I have watched, if you go through life, and I've watched many people react to, they have reactive plans, which basically means I don't have a plan.
Right. I have no plan.
Something happens, and I got to react.
Right. It's not a plan.
A simple thing, like we talked about student loans. A simple thing, I co-signed for student loans for my niece. And she was going back to grad school, and there was in the tune of $50,000-$60,000 worth of student loans. And I called the bank up because I'm not a one to borrow money.
Right.
And I said to the bank, I said, well, so if something happens to my niece, they said, yeah, you're stuck with that $60,000 loan. Hung up the phone, called my niece, and said, go get a life insurance policy.
Exactly. By the way, I was going to say that.
Because, if something, and this is what really compounds, it's a simple thing. At her age, a college age student, $100,000 life insurance policies, maybe
Chump change.
$100 a year.
Yeah, $10 a month. I was gonna say.
$120 a year. Yep.
Absolutely. You know what? I've actually done the same
But
thing.
the tragedy of a youngster having something happen to them, and then your whole entire rest of your family impacted because of that debt you're burdened with on top of that. It's so easy to mitigate that.
It is. I actually had that situation with someone who had multiple children. Okay. And same thing. He had a lot of loans. I was like, all you got to do, and it was a great idea. And it was right. It was cheap. 100,000. And we tailored it to how much the loans were and everything else like that.
Yep.
So it's all good.
Same thing happens with your estate planning when it comes to your family and yourself if you should pass away. Individually, another friend of mine worked for a company. His grandfather owned the company, but didn't have a will or an estate plan.
Oh my goodness. No will?
Got remarried to a
Oh, here we go.
Yep. To a young one, and the whole business transferred over to her. She fired all the rest of the family that worked for them.
By the way,
built that business.
That was her estate plan.
Yep, exactly.
That was her financial plan.
And I've seen other people where they cohabitated for 20 or 30 years. They may not have been married, and one of the partners pass away, and the kids come and take the house that you built and and you paid for.
I know.
But because it was in their name, you're out of luck.
Inadequate or lack of estate planning. Believe it or not, Dave.
And that's where someone like yourself, and a financial planner that looks at the big picture, treats it like a business, looks at that big picture, pays tremendous dividends in the long term of your financial health and your family's health.
Looking at the big picture and then looking at all the little pictures within the big picture. Believe it or not, we're already up against and beyond time, if you can believe that. So thank you for viewing. We talked about a lot of things today. And I think fundamentally, the most important thing that Dave really reiterated, because he's been through the ringer, he's been working for over 40 years, put himself in a position where, he's financially independent. He can work because he wants to, or he can quit because he wants to. That's the whole idea of financial independence. But ultimately, the theme of the show is planning, and that's something that I've lived. You gotta develop a plan.
And start
soon. So I thank you very much for coming, for enjoying. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you, Dave, for joining. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you for viewing.